Electrolytes in the body are charged atoms, ions, and they maintain water balance, pH levels, and ensure the proper operation of the nervous system. For example, potassium 40, K40, and sodium 23, Na23, are used by neurons to fire. The 40 and the 23 are there to indicate the mass and atomic mass units of the elements. The K plus and Na plus ions are dissolved in the cytoplasm and just outside the neuron, respectively. For humans, the ratio should be 2 K40 is to 3 Na23. Otherwise, neurons cannot fire, which eventually leads to death. When they are imbalanced, one can develop dizziness, cramps, and problems like an irregular heartbeat, arrhythmia, or symptoms of mental confusion. In some acute cases, slipping into a coma, brain damage, paralysis, and multiple organ failures are also possible. Inside the neuron, there are several potassium ions as well as negatively charged proteins. This brings the overall charge to negative 70 millivolts. Outside, there are sodium ions dissolved in the extracellular fluid. When a neuron depolarizes, it opens channels that allow the sodium to flood in, raising the charge to positive 40 millivolts. The neuron then tries to balance the change by letting the potassium ions move across the membrane into the extracellular fluid. The sodium-potassium pump then pumps the sodium back outside the cell and the potassium ions back into the cell. Let's hear about an electrolyte imbalance from the experts themselves. At Santa Clara Kaiser Permanente to investigate more into the electrolyte imbalance. In a balance of electrolytes.
Pretty important.
And which age group is most affected by an imbalance of electrolytes?
I would say probably the elderly, like greater than 65, and maybe kids, so pediatric.
So what are the damages caused by an electrolyte imbalance?
Well, it depends on what electrolyte you're talking about, but some of the more common ones being like low sodium or high sodium. People can have nausea or vomiting, feel really dizzy. Sometimes if it's really out of balance, they could have seizures. And if it's their potassium that's out of balance, they could actually have troubles with their heart.
So what are some organs that are most affected by the electrolyte
I would say the brain, the kidneys, and the heart.
And is this preventable by regular monitoring?
I think it's probably more preventable by just making sure that you eat a good diet and drinking fluids and stuff like that. I don't think we need to monitor people who don't have any symptoms.
However, a lot of elderly ailments can start with an electrolyte imbalance. The elderly who have had an electrolyte imbalance may want to monitor themselves in the future. This is why we are introducing the NACPAC OMG as a solution. There is a problem in monitoring electrolytes. They simply cannot be monitored on a daily basis for any sort of diagnosis. Right now, people have to go to a lab, much like a blood test, and get their results back in a couple hours. It is an inconvenience, especially when the test can be done in minutes. The test is usually done after someone has an electrolyte imbalance, but it can be done as a preventive measure instead of a diagnosis. These machines are used in hospitals to detect an imbalance, but as you can see, they are quite unwieldy. They are clearly not meant for in-home use, but they can measure electrolytes. Glucose monitors to detect blood sugar level already exist. Blood can also be measured for electrolytes, but there are no devices yet that can measure for electrolytes in this handheld fashion. Since the device will be geared toward older people, they will want a simplistic design and output. This is a glucose meter compared to a hand, and if you look closely at the index finger, you can see a tiny drop of blood. That is all that is required to get an accurate measure of glucose throughout the bloodstream. The device for measuring electrolytes will be similar in size and handling to the glucose monitor depicted here. It will display the information on a smartphone app that records all previous tests, as well as sending information to one's doctor. This is done by connecting the device via Bluetooth to one's phone. This market research proves that this device is economically profitable.